I need to say this up front because I don't think you'll believe me otherwise, but I have dashcam footage of the first part of this, and I still haven't been able to watch it all the way through. Not once. My wife has seen it, my brother's seen it, and both of them told me to stop asking people to watch it with me because it's messing with them too. So I'm just going to type this out instead because honestly, typing feels safer than pressing play. Okay, so background. I drive for a regional freight company out of the Midwest, mostly appliance deliveries, washers, dryers, fridges, that kind of thing, and I do a route that runs through a stretch of hill country that's got maybe 40 miles of nothing but trees on both sides, no towns, one gas station about halfway that's barely ever open at night. I've done this exact route probably 300 times in the 4 years I've worked there, and for 300 times, nothing weird ever happened. I want you to hold on to that, because it matters later. This wasn't some cursed road everybody already knew about. It was just my normal Tuesday night. I got a late start that night because of a mechanical issue back at the yard. Nothing serious, just a sensor that kept throwing a false code, and the mechanic had to clear it twice before they let me roll. So I was already annoyed before I even got on the highway. And I remember thinking to myself that I was going to make the time back up because I knew this route cold, and I knew exactly where I could push a little without doing anything unsafe. By the time I hit the hill country stretch, I was actually ahead of my original schedule, which almost never happens, and I remember feeling kind of proud of it in a dumb way. Like, okay, good, small win. It was maybe 11 at night, real dark, the kind of dark where your headlights are basically the only light that exists for miles. No moon that night either. I checked later. It was a new moon, which I know sounds like I'm setting up something spooky on purpose, but I promise I only looked that up afterward because I wanted to understand why it felt so much darker than usual. I came around this long bend. The road curves along the side of a ridge there, and my headlights swept across the road ahead of me, and for a second I thought it was a deer. You get used to scanning for deer eyes at night. They catch the light and glow, and for a split second that's what I thought I was seeing, but it wasn't low to the ground like a deer would be. It was standing up. It was a person. I want to be really clear here because I've gone over this in my head like 500 times. He wasn't walking. He wasn't waving his arms or flagging me down or doing any of the things a person does when they need help. He was just standing in the middle of my lane, facing me, arms down at his sides, and he did not move as I got closer. I laid on the horn and started braking, and he still didn't move. And for about 2 full seconds, I actually thought I was going to hit him, like my brain had fully accepted that this was happening. And then at the very last second, I swerved into the oncoming lane, which thank God was empty, and I got the truck stopped, maybe 30 yards past him. I sat there with my hands shaking on the wheel, and I looked in my side mirror, and he was still standing there, same spot, hadn't turned around, hadn't run, hadn't reacted at all to a 40,000-pound truck nearly ending him. He was just facing the direction I'd come from now, which meant he'd have had to turn around to still be facing me, except I never saw him turn. Here's the part I still can't explain, and I've asked around a lot of people since then. A trucker doesn't stop for a guy standing in the road like that. Not because we're heartless, but because every single one of us has heard the stories. The guy pretending to be hurt so his buddies can rob you, or worse. We're taught not to stop, but something about how still he was made it feel less like a threat and more like something was actually wrong with him, like maybe he was in shock, or sleepwalking, or having some kind of medical event. So against every instinct I'd built up over 4 years, I put my hazards on, and I got out. I didn't walk all the way to him. I stopped maybe 15 feet away and I called out, asked if he was okay, told him I could call for help. He didn't answer. He didn't even look at me. Not really. His head was kind of angled down and to the side, like he was looking at something on the ground near his feet, except there was nothing there. I called out again and got nothing, and that's when the hair on my arms actually stood up, because you know how you can just feel when something is wrong with a situation, even if you can't point to why. That's what I felt. I felt it in my chest before my brain caught up. I got back in the truck. I'm not proud of that, leaving a guy who might have genuinely needed help, but I want you to understand I was more scared in that moment than I've ever been on the job, and I trust that feeling more than I trust looking like a good person on the internet. I pulled around him in the other lane again and got moving, and in my mirrors, for as long as I could still see him, he never moved, never turned to watch me go, just stood there facing the empty road. About a quarter mile past him, there was a car pulled onto the shoulder, and I want to say I wasn't shocked because at that point I was expecting something, but I was. All 4 doors open, headlights off, engine off as far as I could tell, just sitting there with every door hanging open like someone had gotten out in a hurry from all 4 seats at once. I did not stop. I did not slow down. I called it into dispatch and gave them the mile marker and kept driving, hands still shaking, heart still going, and dispatch said they'd notify the state police, which I found out later they actually did. And a trooper drove out there about 40 minutes after my call and found nothing. No man, no car, nothing on the shoulder at all. I want to sit with that for a second because I think it's important. It wasn't that the car was gone and they found tire tracks or a scuff mark or anything that proved something had been there. There was nothing. The trooper told my dispatcher there wasn't even a flattened patch of grass where a car would have been sitting on the shoulder. I don't know what to do with that information, and I never have. So by this point, I was done, pretending I was fine to keep driving. I was maybe 20 minutes from the halfway gas station I mentioned, the one that's barely ever open, and I decided I was going to pull in there, lock my doors, and sit for a bit even if I lost the time I'd made up earlier. Didn't care anymore about being ahead of schedule. I just wanted 4 solid walls of steel around me and some time to calm down. The gas station was dark like always, that one pump light buzzing over an empty lot. No other trucks, no cars, nobody. I've stopped there plenty of times before. It's just a normal quiet spot. But that night it felt different. It felt like the kind of quiet where you're not sure if it's actually empty or if it's just not showing you what's there. I pulled into the truck, parking around back, did my usual lap with my eyes checking the mirrors, saw nothing, and I locked every door on the cab, which I don't normally even bother doing. Then I called my wife. I know it was late, but I needed to hear a normal human voice more than I needed her to sleep. And bless her, she picked up on the second ring. I told her what happened, probably talking way too fast, and she did what she always does, which is try to find the practical explanation. Maybe he was on something. Maybe it was some kind of prank. People do that. Stage stuff to freak out truckers. There's videos of it online. And I wanted to believe her. I really did. And by the time we hung up about 20 minutes later, I actually felt calmer. Felt like maybe I just had one of those nights where your brain runs away with you. I told her I was going to try to sleep for a bit before finishing the route, and she said, "Okay, be safe. Call me when you're moving again." I set an alarm for 45 minutes, laid the seat back, and I actually did fall asleep, which honestly surprised me, given everything. I woke up to my alarm going off, and for a second I just laid there with my eyes closed, doing that thing where you're trying to convince your body it's had enough rest. When I finally opened my eyes and looked up through the windshield, there was a car parked directly in front of my truck, maybe 10 feet away, engine running, headlights on, and pointed right into my cab, and all 4 doors wide open. I don't have words for what that did to me. My whole body just locked up. I sat there staring at it, at the headlights blasting straight into my eyes, so I couldn't even see past them into the car itself. Couldn't tell if anyone was in it, couldn't see the man from the road anywhere, and the lot around it was completely empty otherwise. Same as before. Nobody, nothing, just this car sitting there like it had been waiting for me to wake up. I fumbled for my phone with hands that weren't working right, and I called 911 this time, not dispatch, actual police, and I was trying to whisper and explain at the same time, which probably made no sense to whoever answered. While I was on the phone, I made myself look again because I needed to know if someone was walking toward my truck, and the headlights just kept burning into the windshield, unmoving, engines still running. And I could hear it now that I was fully awake, a low idle, definitely a real running engine. This wasn't some hallucination I could talk myself out of. The dispatcher on the phone kept me talking while a unit headed my way, and I want to tell you exactly what happened next, because I've told this part to 3 different people, and every single one of them gets the same look on their face. I watched the headlights the entire time, never looked away, not even to check my mirrors, and at some point during that call, I genuinely could not tell you how long. The headlights just weren't there anymore. No car pulling away, no sound of an engine receding, no dust or gravel kicked up. I looked away for maybe 2 seconds to check that my doors were still locked, and when I looked back, empty lot. The police got there 12 minutes later. They walked the whole lot with flashlights, checked behind the building, checked the tree line at the edge of the property, found nothing, and the officer who talked to me was polite about it, but I could tell he thought I'd probably just spooked myself half to death after a long shift. I don't blame him. If someone told me this story cold, I'd probably think the same thing. I finished my route that night with the radio up loud the entire way, and I did not stop again for anything, not even when I needed gas. I just prayed the tank held out, and it barely did. For the next few weeks, I asked to be reassigned off that route, and my company was decent about it, gave me a different lane for a while, and I genuinely thought that was the end of it. I want you to sit with that too, because I thought it was over. I thought whatever that was, it stayed out there on that road, in those woods, and I just needed to not go back. About 5 weeks later, I was pulling into my own driveway around 2 in the morning after a totally different, totally normal run. My house is in a quiet development, nothing like those hill roads, street lights, neighbors, the whole deal. I was tired, on autopilot, pulling my truck into the spot I always use on the street outside my house because my driveway is too short for the cab. I put it in park, and I was gathering my stuff to go inside when I glanced toward my own driveway, just a normal glance, the kind you do without thinking, and there was a car sitting in it. Not my wife's car, not a neighbor's car I recognized. A dark sedan, engine off this time, but every single door open, all 4 of them, sitting silent in my driveway at 2 in the morning, like it had just been dropped there. I did not get out of my truck. I sat there staring at my own front door, at the dark windows of my own house where my wife and my kid were asleep, and I called her phone over and over until she finally picked up groggy and confused, and I told her to check the door was locked and not to look outside, just check the lock and stay in the bedroom, and she must have heard something in my voice because she didn't argue, she just did it. I stayed in that truck until the sun started coming up. When it got light enough to see clearly, the driveway was empty. No car, no tire marks in the dew on the grass beside it, nothing. I never told the police about that one. I don't know why. Maybe because I already knew how the last report went. My wife knows, my brother knows, and now you know. And none of us have any idea what it means, or if it's finished, or if it was ever really about that road at all. I've been driving refrigerated trailers for almost 9 years, and I've had every kind of bad night you can think of. Blown tires, ice storms, a guy who tried to break into my cab at a truck stop outside Amarillo once. None of that comes close to what happened on a delivery run through Eastern Oregon back in March. And I still check the back of my trailer every single time I stop now, no matter how tired I am, no matter how safe the lot looks. So, quick context because it matters later. I haul frozen product mostly, meat, seafood, that kind of thing, for a distribution company that supplies restaurants across a few states. This particular run was a big one, a full trailer headed to a distribution hub outside Boise, and the route took me through this long stretch of high desert in Oregon, where you can drive for an hour and see maybe 2 other vehicles the entire time. I'd done this route before, not a ton, but enough that it wasn't unfamiliar to me. I want to say that up front, because I think it's easy for people to imagine truckers only running roads they've never seen before when something bad happens, and that's just not true. Sometimes it's the roads you know that get you. It was early evening when I made my first stop, just a regular fuel and bathroom stop at a truck stop that had a little diner attached. Real basic place, but it had decent coffee, and I always stopped there on this route, out of habit. I remember there was a guy sitting outside near the entrance when I walked in, not doing anything weird, just sitting on the curb with a backpack. And I only remember him because he sort of watched me walk past in a way that felt a little too long, a little too focused. But I've had plenty of people look at me weird at truck stops, and nothing ever came of it, so I didn't think much of it. Grabbed my coffee, used the bathroom, walked back out maybe 15 minutes later, and he wasn't there anymore. Didn't think about him again. That's important. Hold on to that. I got back on the road as it was getting dark and settled into the drive. This stretch has almost no cell service for long chunks of it, which I usually don't mind because it means nobody can bother me. But that night, I kept catching myself checking my phone anyway out of habit and getting annoyed there was nothing. About 2 hours in, I stopped at a rest area to stretch my legs. Nothing fancy, just a gravel pull-off with a single vault toilet and some picnic tables. Completely empty when I pulled in. I did my usual walk around the truck before going inside, which is something my dad drilled into me back when he was still driving. Always check your rig, before and after. You leave it unattended, and everything looked normal. Tires fine, no damage. Trailer doors sealed with the tamper tag still intact. I went in, did my business, came back out maybe 5 minutes later, and I want to be honest, I didn't do a second walk around that time. I was tired and just wanted to get moving. That's a detail I keep coming back to because I think it matters for what happened later, that I don't actually know for certain the trailer was clean when I pulled back onto the highway. Another 2.5 hours passed with nothing happening, just flat dark road, and my headlights, and the hum of the engine, and I was starting to feel that heavy-eyed thing you get late at night where your body starts negotiating with you about sleep, even though your brain knows you've still got miles to go. I decided to pull off at the next spot I could find and take a real nap, not just a stretch, an actual 45 minutes with my eyes closed, because I know my limits and I wasn't going to push past them on a road with basically no shoulder and no lights. The next spot was another rest area, bigger this time, split into a car side and a truck side with some trees between them, and there were a couple cars parked on the far side, but the truck section was empty, except for me. I backed into a spot, killed the engine, set an alarm, and reclined the seat. I remember feeling relieved to finally close my eyes. I don't know exactly how long I'd been asleep when I heard it. My alarm hadn't gone off yet, but something woke me up hard, like a jolt straight through my chest. It was a thud, and I felt it more than heard it, honestly. Felt it come up through the frame of the truck like something heavy had hit metal. I sat there frozen for a second the way you do when you're not sure if you dreamed something or not. And then it happened again, and this time, I was fully awake enough to know it wasn't a dream. It was coming from behind me, from the trailer. I sat up in the sleeper, thinking maybe cargo had shifted. We hit a rough patch of road a while back, and I remember thinking at the time, I should check the load straps at the next stop. So my first instinct was, that's all this was, boxes settling. But then, I heard something that wasn't a thud. It was quieter, more deliberate, almost like a scrape, like something dragging itself along the floor of the trailer. And boxes don't do that. Boxes don't move like that on their own. I got out of the cab and stood there in the dark for a second, just listening. The rest area was dead silent otherwise. No wind, no other trucks running their engines nearby, nothing. I walked back to the trailer doors and checked the tamper tag first because that's the thing you're trained to check, and it was still there, still sealed, unbroken. That should have made me feel better, and for about 2 seconds it did, and then I heard the thud again, close enough to the door, this time that I actually flinched and stepped back. I stood there for probably a full minute just staring at those doors, trying to decide what to do. Every part of my training says don't open a sealed trailer on the road. That seal is there for a reason, chain of custody, insurance, all of it. But I also could not just stand there and drive away with something moving around in a trailer full of $100,000 of frozen product like nothing was happening. So I called my dispatcher first, actually did that part right, told her what I was hearing, and she told me to call it in to local police before doing anything else, which I did. The dispatcher on the police line asked if I was in immediate danger, and I honestly didn't know how to answer that, because nothing had happened to me directly, it was just sound. But the sound was enough that my hands were shaking holding the phone. She told me a unit was about 25 minutes out, given how remote the area was, and to stay in a safe position, ideally locked in my cab, until they arrived. I did try that. I got back in the cab, locked the doors, and sat there watching the trailer in my mirrors. For a few minutes, it was quiet again, and I actually started to second-guess myself, wondering if I'd imagined how bad it sounded, wondering if this was going to be one of those things where the cops show up and find nothing, and I look like an idiot. And then, the thudding started again, except now it had a rhythm to it, not random shifting, but something that sounded almost like it was hitting the same spot over and over, deliberate, and underneath it I swear I heard a voice, low, muffled through the trailer walls. Not words I could make out, just a tone, a human tone. That's when I stopped waiting. I know what my training says, and I know what the police told me, but I could not sit there listening to what sounded like a person in distress, or a person trying to break something, and do nothing. I grabbed the tire iron I keep behind my seat, more for my own nerves than because I thought it would actually help against whatever was in there, and I went back to the doors. The tamper tag was still intact, which meant whoever or whatever was in there had gotten in before I ever sealed it back at the distribution center, which meant they'd been riding in a frozen trailer for hours already. I broke the seal, unlatched the doors, and swung them open, and the cold hit me first, that blast of refrigerated air, and then my flashlight caught movement near the back of the trailer, behind a stack of pallets. It was the guy from the truck stop, the one who'd been sitting on the curb, watching me. I recognized him instantly, even in that light, and he looked bad, lips almost blue, shivering so hard his whole body was shaking, and when my light hit him, he flinched and put his arm up like he expected me to hit him. I want to tell you my first reaction was fear, and it was, but it shifted fast into something else once I saw the state he was in, because this wasn't someone playing it cool or trying to ambush me. This was someone who looked like he was dying. I asked him what the hell he was doing, and he could barely get words out. His teeth were chattering too hard, but he managed to say something about needing to get to Boise, that he didn't have money for a bus, that he thought he could just ride quiet in the back and slip out once we got there. Here's where it gets complicated though, because as I was standing there, trying to decide whether to believe him, whether to help him out of the trailer, he suddenly lunged toward me, not at me exactly, more past me, toward the open doors and the outside air, and I stumbled back, and he went down hard onto the gravel outside the trailer. And that's when I saw he had something clutched in his other hand this whole time, wrapped in a jacket, and it fell open when he hit the ground. It was a box cutter, one of the big retractable ones, and next to it a phone that wasn't his. I could tell because the case had a photo insert of a woman and 2 kids that clearly weren't him, and a wallet that also wasn't his. He must have realized what I was looking at because he scrambled up onto his knees, still shaking from the cold, and started talking fast, telling me it wasn't what it looked like, that he found that stuff, that he wasn't trying to hurt anybody, he just needed a ride. I didn't believe him, and I still don't. Whoever that phone and wallet belonged to, I think about that a lot, because it means somewhere between that first truck stop and wherever he'd actually gotten into my trailer, he'd taken something from somebody, and I don't know what happened to that person, and I never got an answer. I backed away from him with the tire iron up and told him not to move, and I want to walk you through those next few minutes because they were honestly worse than the moment I opened the doors. Because at least in that moment I didn't know what I was dealing with. Now I did, and knowing didn't make it better. He stayed on his knees for maybe 30 seconds, looking at the ground, breathing hard, and I thought maybe he'd just wait it out, but then he started talking again, except now his voice had changed, gone from shaky and pleading to something flatter, almost calm, and he asked me if I was really going to stand there and wait for cops over a phone and a wallet, said it like it was nothing, said maybe we could figure something else out. I told him I wasn't figuring anything out and to stay where he was, and that's when he started shifting his weight like he was getting ready to stand. I told him again, loud this time, to stay down, and he did stop moving, but his eyes kept going past me toward the front of the truck, toward the cab, and it hit me that he wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking for a way around me. The rest area had a tree line maybe 40 feet off to the side of the truck parking, dark enough that if he got a head start into it, I don't know that I'd have been able to see which direction he went, let alone catch him, especially not with a tire iron in one hand and a phone in the other trying to keep dispatch on the line. He tried it once, came up off his knees fast, faked like he was going to go straight past me toward the road, and when I stepped to block that side, he cut hard toward the tree line instead, and I swung the tire iron more to put something between us than to actually hit him, and it caught the strap of the backpack he still had on and spun him half around, enough that he stumbled and went down again on the gravel, and that was enough. That few seconds was enough, because that's when I saw headlights finally coming down the exit ramp into the rest area, the police unit, and I have never in my life been so relieved to see flashing lights. He didn't try again after that. I think seeing the lights took whatever fight he had left out of him, and by the time the officer was out of the car, he was just sitting on the ground with his hands up, saying something about how he wasn't trying to hurt anybody, which I guess by his standard maybe he wasn't, but standing there with a fresh scrape on my forearm from where the backpack strap caught me wrong, I wasn't in a mood to give him the benefit of the doubt. When the officers got him in cuffs, he didn't resist much at that point. Honestly, I think whatever adrenaline had gotten him up off the ground was gone, and they ran the wallet and the phone right there on scene. Turned out both had been reported stolen earlier that same day from a car that had been broken into at a rest stop about 60 miles back. The owner had left her purse and her husband's phone in the console for just a few minutes while she used the bathroom. They never fully explained to me how he'd gotten into my sealed trailer, and neither did he, not with any answer that made sense. My best guess, and it's still just a guess, is that he got in during the window between when I sealed it at the distribution center and when I actually left the yard, and just stayed hidden and quiet for hours in freezing conditions, hoping I wouldn't check again before Boise, which I probably wouldn't have if I hadn't heard those thuds. The officer who took my statement told me flat out that if I hadn't stopped for that nap, if he'd made it all the way to Boise, still hidden and slipped out at the distribution hub like he apparently planned, there's a decent chance nobody would have connected him to that stolen wallet and phone at all, and he'd have just disappeared into a new city with somebody else's identity in his pocket. That sat with me for a long time after.